Hello and welcome to Telling Tales. Here we tell atmospheric stories together through the medium of tabletop role-playing games. It's Monday night, which means we are playing Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. This is the third episode of the third arc of our anthology series that we're doing. The previous ones, Darkwood and Fingask, are available in full on our YouTube and on our Twitch VODs. And this arc is called Baile. Let's introduce our stream manager, John. Hi, John.
Hello. I totally didn't forget where the button to press was. That's silly. How would you suggest that? No.
I would never. John is the person who is hiding behind the curtain and pulling all of the strings. So any images that appear on screen and rules clarifications that we receive in secret in our earpieces are John, which allow us to just seamlessly flow through the game. So thanks, John, for allowing no seams.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, John. John has also done the majority of the artwork that may appear on screen this evening and is very talented. Wouldn't say that when he was here. I would. Down below the video are links to our social media, so Twitter and Instagram, also our Twitch and YouTube, our Discord, which you can join for free and come and chat to us about all things tabletop role-playing games and otherwise, and also our Patreon, which if you enjoy the channel, you can sign up, and there are varying levels of support that you can give us with varying levels of reward, from access to secret hidden bits of the Discord where you get behind the scenes information and things like that, all the way to Matt running tabletop role-playing game for you and your friends every month. So lots of things there. Other things that we do on the channel on Tuesday night at the moment is Blades in the Dark. Wednesday night, Simba Room, which is our sort of flagship show, the first thing that we had on here. On the first Saturday of every month is a one-shot adventure, different systems, players, GMs. So far we've had Alien, Troika, Morkborg, Fiasco, The Expanse, Honey Heist, which I ran and was very silly, and the new One Ring from Free League. There is a second part of the One Ring, which is going to be run on the 28th of August. So it's like an extra bonus episode for everybody. And the date for the September one shot is currently being discussed. But that will we will update you as we have a firm date for that. So episode 3. In the first episode, the group received a letter from Mary Brown and from Reverend John Moore, who were involved in the first 2 arcs, asking them to come to the Isle of Iona. So the group came and met up with Reverend John Moore and then stayed the night. And in the morning went to meet with Mary Brown, who freshly arrived on the island and is now a member of Parliament. If we can bring Steve on, who plays Edmund. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Jonny.
Would you give us a little bit of information on the conversations that were had with Mary Brown and Reverend Moore about the reason for you having been asked here?
Yeah, certainly. So, having met Mrs. Brown at the ferry, we walked over to a house or a cottage that they'd rented or arranged for. So this is another sort of base of operations, and we got there and found that there were just a whole stack of documents and newspaper reports and bits of information laid out on the tables and the walls. And we were informed that our help had been requested because there was an investigation to complete. There'd been a death on the island just a few days ago, and Mary Brown and the Reverend wanted some assistance to cover all the angles before any leads got cold. So the bits of information that we were able to gather at that point were that the victim was somebody named Nora Fenario, or otherwise known as Netta, and she'd been born in Egypt to an Italian father and an English mother. She grew up in Italy. She moved to London, but more pertinent perhaps was that she's been involved in a number of occult groups, and she was found dead on a hillock on the island on a cross that had been cut into the earth. Yes, she was unclothed and wearing a silver cross that had tarnished, turned black, turned discolored. She wasn't a native to the island. There was no evidence of foul play. They couldn't find they couldn't determine the cause of death. She was about 33 years old, and yeah, she'd come from London and she'd been staying on the island for about 2 to 3 months beforehand, which seemed pretty odd. So yes, there's been no official ruling on the case yet, but it's likely to be written off as accidental death. Now, because of Nora's connections, it seems likely that there's something else at play. So Mrs. Brown and the Reverend are keen to unpick these connections and determine whether which occult group in London is potentially involved. And this might also tie into the disappearance of the book that has appeared in the previous 2 arcs, that had been under safekeeping by the Reverend, but went missing from a locked vault some years ago. So I think that's all the. We have some names of people to contact, but I'm sure those all come out in the wash.
Yeah, that's great. So if Matt can come on, who plays Dane, following this conversation that you all had, you all headed to where Netta's body was found.
Yeah, that's right. So so the group, kind of following the lead of those already there, take a walk outside of the village into the hills. It's kind of misty out, but as we sort of ascend and move away from the village, the mist sort of dissipates and it turns into quite a nice day. So eventually we sort of reach a peak of around 300 or 400 feet and see a lock and head down to this little sort of recessed area. There's nothing very obvious, but at that point, the group stop and we get told that this is the place where she was found. So there's kind of a small grassy mound about 2 or 3 feet high, and on the front, as Steve said, there has a cross cut in the front of the mound, again a couple of feet high. Her body was found on top of the mound, and the cross is sort of, it's like a sort of religious symbol rather than just a straightforward cross. So the group are kind of investigating, having a look around. Jemima in particular is thinking about how old the cutting might be and trying to understand whether it's recent or whether it might be old. Kind of shortly into the look around, we recall the group dream, and we understand that there's obviously some links there. There's some representation within the dream that looks like the kind of imagery that we're seeing up at the mound. The group generally takes this well, although Dane is kind of taken aback by this quite a lot and didn't do so well on his sanity check. Eliza's looking for a trapdoor. She's wondering if there's a man-made structure or not, but is assured that it's unlikely to be. That's kind of old stonework, maybe that's been grown over. And there's some speculation from the group as to whether Nora might have died there or whether she might have moved there. Dane is keen to know if there's any records of people moving in and off the island through the ferry. So there's a lot of speculation, but ultimately we don't really learn a huge amount from the spot and get encouraged to sort of head back into the village and begin our investigations, probably looking for Mrs. McRae, who's a farm owner who the victim had lodged with for some time. And so having kind of got our fill of seeing the mound and the cross, we head back into the village together, where we're hoping to get directions to the farm.
That's great. So yeah, if Inga can come on, who plays Eliza. Hey Inga. So yeah, after you basically drop Reverend Moore and Mary Brown off back at their sort of base, they give you a map, don't they, and draw on a couple of locations, one of which is the farm.
Yes, the Reverend kind of points us in the right, sort of marks off some of the key locations before we head off. And then as we're kind of heading over towards Mrs. McRae's farm, Dane kind of pulls Jemima aside a little bit to sort of try and get a bit more of an understanding, trying to sort of catch up. He feels like he's a bit behind compared to the others in terms of like understanding what all these strange kind of occult things going on are. And yeah, we've obviously done in our own ways different sort of bits of research and taking more of an interest in sort of trying to understand it. So there's a bit of a conversation about that and sort of trying to figure out, you know, the significance or what everything means. And I'm not sure that Dane ends up terribly assured by the end of all of that, but he certainly tries to kind of get a bit up to speed and sort of reaffirms that he's, you know, there to help in whatever way he can. So we get to the farm and we decide that Eliza and Jemima will go, just the two of them, to try and sort of knock on the door and speak to her, sort of posing as reporters rather than leading with. You know, Mary had given us like sort of, you know, papers to sort of say that we had authority to sort of investigate and stuff. But as we approach, we see there's a little note on the door saying that she's in the barn. Sort of poke my head through the windows quickly to sort of have a peek in her house, but we sort of head off to the barn. But as we approach, we hear an overbearing sound of buzzing, and that's where we left off.
And unfortunately, Sam is unable to join us this evening to play Jemima, so she'll be taking a bit of a back seat, and any bits I'll be filling in. But yes, large buzzing sound and a slightly ajar barn door. So I think if you can make a sanity roll for Eliza, start the evening off right.
That is a 43, which is a success.
Good. Okay. Yes. So you stood outside this slightly ajar barn door. Big sound of buzzing.
I will turn around and see if I can see Edmund and Dane and gesture over for them to come over if they can.
Can we hear it from where we are?
Probably not, and notice what it is, because you're in the countryside, so there's sounds of, you know, wind in the trees. Even where you are is probably louder than that sound would be from where you are.
They would see Eliza drawing her gun.
Yikes. Okay. So Edmund was trying to stay sort of out of the direct line of sight, but I think, you know, will have been maybe every so often just sort of, you know, glancing around a corner. And so, yes, once Edmund sees Eliza beckoning, he'll head over. Yes, I'll rush over.
I think Jemima, probably by the time you've got there, has already sort of said, "What, Miss Smith? What are you doing?"
Shh. And I'll just try to like poke my head, sort of just very quietly, sort of like just one eye, and then just see what I can see through the door, and just ever so gently try and push it a little bit until I can see just something without kind of fully, you know, bursting right in. Just as apprehensively trying to get sight on something as I can.
Okay. What you see is a figure leaning over a large item on the floor, which it's relatively dim in there, so you can't see properly from where you are what it is. And sort of a cloud of insects.
This figure, is it human size, vaguely
Yes.
human shaped? Yeah. I think I'll creep just back out slightly if I feel like I haven't been seen, and just very, very quietly, in the faintest whisper I can muster, just say what I've seen to the group. And if I don't get much response,
how many insects? Well,
Yes, Johnny. How many insects?
I guess I'm thinking, is this like a? I can't ask this in character. Maybe this is what I ask. Is this like a midgie swarm, or is this like? I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I don't know if
Unusual
I've ever
eyes.
seen a midgie swarm, but just lots.
Okay, I think Dane will kind of pop in and have a look.
Yeah. Are you? Is Dane completely sort of entering the barn? Yeah. Okay. So after a second, when your eyes kind of adjust, what you are seeing is a woman leaning over a decaying creature on the ground. And it's a large number of flies, blue bottles, and the like.
I will take a couple of steps forward. Man, is everything okay?
As you say the first word, this woman kind of turns, wide-eyed. Hello, who are you?
I'm sorry. We could hear the noise. Are you okay? Are you safe? We were just passing.
Yes, I'm safe. Which is she's kind of semi-shouting over the kind of roar of all these insects. Yes, it's just let's go outside. As she stands up, you can see that it is a cow on the floor.
Is she heading out, kind of where I came from, or
in your direction? Yeah.
Okay. Dane's going to kind of let her pass as if she's going out, and then try and catch a glance of the cow a bit closer up to kind of see what state it's in, I suppose.
Can those of us outside hear the conversation?
You would. You can make a listen roll if you're trying to listen.
Okay.
But as a default, you would hear that there is a conversation taking place, but over the sound of the buzz.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily, without trying, pick out exactly what's being said.
I rolled a 5 on my listen roll.
Oh, nice.
Which I think means a tick. Does it?
If it's
Sounds
less
like
than half of your thing,
Yeah.
I would presume so.
No, I did not.
Jemima does not succeed. Yeah, Jemima didn't pass either. So yes, Eliza overhears.
I'll just say I'll relay it just as quickly as I can as she's coming out, I guess, and maybe hastily put back the gun.
Edmund looks relieved.
Oh, there are more of you. Hello. Let's should we go into the house? We can have a cup of tea, perhaps.
Did Dane see anything unusual when he was having a glimpse of the cow, or was it just a dead cow otherwise?
Not apart from you would expect that she must have left it in there for a long time for it to be in the state of decay with this many kind of bugs around it as it is. But that wasn't the impression that you got from the fact that she was there. You know, do you know what I mean? From her, you didn't get the impression that it had been there for ages, but from the state of the cow, you did.
So that's quite bizarre that she was just stood over it. Okay.
So yeah, she leads you into the house. So you go through kind of into the entrance bit and then into the main house. And she offers you all a seat at the dining room table. And as she's preparing some hot water, there's just a and unless anybody's saying anything, it's basically complete silence, just with this ticking clock. She's preparing the tea.
I think Eliza would wait until she comes back through, rather than just chatting in her home.
Yeah, she returns after a few minutes with a pot of tea and some cups and puts one out for everybody and pours everybody a tea. And sits and says, it's the third one this week.
I haven't seen it. So I can't.
I'm sorry, third what this week? Sorry, it's Mrs. McRae, is it?
Yes, yeah. Sorry, yes, I haven't. Excuse me. Yes, yes, Sally McRae. Nice to meet you all.
Pleasure, Eliza Smith.
Edmund Carter.
Mr. Harrow, I'm so sorry for startling you before.
No problem. It was just it's very strange.
What? Did someone leave that here?
I mean, it's one of mine. I'm not sure what.
I'm sorry, what are we talking about?
Mr. McRae was with there was a cow. It had died. It looked like it'd been there for a long time.
But it hadn't, Mr. Harrow. She was, as far as I was aware, she was fine yesterday.
If Jemima's sat sort of near enough, I might just whisper quietly something to Jemima to say, "See, you can't always trust when something looks like it's been there for a while." So it's unusual, is it? These cows dying at this time of year? And Eliza has probably never looked less like a country person in her life as she says that.
Have they been getting sick, or to your knowledge?
Not as far as I was aware, but the state of them, they must have been being eaten from the inside out. That's the only... I've seen I've seen decaying animals, but that's days or weeks.
Well, as it happens, we were planning to speak to you on a completely different matter, but I'm sorry, this sounds awfully unsettling. Have you spoken to anybody about this?
Well, no, I mean, the first time I just thought it was a weird thing. Thought maybe I'd miscounted the cows and found one and it had maybe been dead for a few days. But after the second, I've been paying very close attention to the cows, and she was definitely fine yesterday. Maybe I should speak to the police.
Does anybody else keep cattle on this island? Has anybody else got funny cows? Or is it just yours?
Jimmy Doherty keeps cows, but he's over the other side of the island. I haven't spoken to him in the past few days just to know if there's anything strange happening with his.
Jimmy Doherty, we heard he not to be too insensitive about this, but we heard he found something rather more disturbing than a dead cow a few days ago.
Yes, I believe he did.
We should probably explain why we're here. As you might have guessed, we've been asked to look into the death of Nora, and there are
Asked
some.
By whom?
Your MP, Mary Brown.
Seems very strange.
Well, perhaps it's a good job she has her ear to the ground, because if it seems that the incidents with your cattle are somewhat strange as well. So yes, that's why we're here. We have a few questions, if that's all right with you. Perhaps as we're going about our business here, we might be able to shed some light on things. We'll certainly ask around to see if anybody else has had any issues with their livestock.
That would be kind.
Well, more importantly than us doing a job is, I think we all really want to understand what's happening here. It's not really about duty; it's about understanding something rather awful. And if your cows are mixed up in this whole business as well, then perhaps there's more than one thing that can be discovered or understood. I mean, how are you holding up, Mrs. McRae, after everything? It must have been a shock.
Miss Smith, have you ever been married or had children?
Eliza will visibly stiffen a bit at that. So unfortunately, I was denied the opportunity.
Well, when your husband and son are taken away to fight somebody else's war and do not return. The death of somebody who is essentially a stranger does not hold the same weight as it might have once done.
But she stayed with you, right? Is that correct?
She did.
And for
I
how
can
long?
tell. I can. 9 weeks, 8 weeks.
And she remained a stranger all that time.
In relative terms to my son and husband, Miss Smith. She
Did
was
she-
a strange woman. Nice enough, but strange. Polite, strange.
What in particular was strange about her? If you don't mind me asking.
She came here. She mostly just wandered around the beaches and moorlands, and well, she told me she was entering into trances, trying to contact the spiritual realm of the island, she said. Once she told me that she'd been in a trance once that had lasted an entire week. And if that were to happen while she was here, I was to contact nobody about it. It was fine. So I guess I'd become kind of used to her eccentricities, to put it nicely.
Silly is strange. Did she ever express any concerns or fears to you? Did she seem comfortable despite everything she was doing?
On Sunday, she had become quite frantic. She seemed frightened, and you'll think me ridiculous. She seemed to think that she was being attacked from a distance. In her mind, by someone else's mind.
Did she ever indicate who this might have been? Who she was threatened by?
No.
What did she do to get in these trances? Did she do something to get into this state of mind, or this sort of
I'm
ritual?
afraid I don't know, unless the wanderings were a part of it. I'm not sure. But that same day, she told me she'd seen some kind of rudderless boat flying across the sky, and that she'd been receiving these terrifying messages from beyond the veil.
Did she keep a journal or anything of the sort? Did she write to anybody? Did she have any friends here on the island?
Not on the island. The only person that she really mentioned to me is a fortune, somebody fortune.
But she was never here on the island.
No.
Did she pay for her lodgings herself?
Yes.
How? With cash? Did she?
Yes.
How did she make the arrangements with you? Did she arrive on the island first and then take up with you, or did she contact you before arriving?
She arrived on the island, but as she arrived, it was a time when a lot of summer visitors were leaving. So, yes, we often have a number of people on the island over summer, but less so at this time of year.
She sounds like she might have drawn herself, might have drawn some attention to herself during her stay. I can't imagine there's many people wandering around in trances on this island. Did anyone in the village have anything to say to you about her?
Comments about her being a bit strange. She dressed in the manner of a city rather than an island. So she could, and obviously much more tanned than a Scot. It was clear that she wasn't a local, even excluding the fact that everybody here knows everybody else.
Did anything stand out to you about the last day that you saw her? A few things. On that Sunday, after those conversations I've mentioned, she packed all of her belongings and said that she was leaving right away. And she fled the house. But the Fairies don't run on a Sunday, so she ended up coming back and went straight to her room and I think fell asleep. And well, when she reappeared later on, she seemed a lot calmer, and said that she'd changed her mind and was going to stay.
Although she was calmer, did she seem like herself, or did she seem somehow different?
I would say that she seemed resigned rather than happy. Anyway, Monday morning, I went to check on her, and her room was empty. And it was a few hours later that we started looking for her.
If she could sometimes go off on these trances, even not for up to a week, was there a particular reason that you started to look for her so soon?
No, the week-long trances were before here. That didn't occur here. So, it was her strange behaviour, and she'd normally return to the house sort of. If she was gone in the morning, she'd normally return for lunch, or maybe go to one of the places in the village for lunch, and she hadn't been seen. So anyway, when I went to check on her in her room, she left out a couple of pieces of jewelry, and they'd gone black. Silver jewelry.
Everything, all of it.
Yes.
Did the police take this? Take these items?
Yes, they've taken all of her belongings.
You obviously knew her for quite some time, even if you weren't that close. You must have seen her. I suppose she could only have travelled upwards so much. Was there anything else was there anything that was missing? I suppose to be a little less vague about things. Obviously, she was found undressed. Were all her clothes here, or would it seem that she did leave wearing something? Or were all of her belongings found here in the room?
I'm afraid I couldn't answer that for definite without. I mean, I've got a vague idea of everything that she had, but the police came and took it. I didn't check it all before they came.
No, of course.
You certainly had a strange few weeks, haven't you?
Might I ask, did she ask you any questions about the area or the region or landmarks or places of interest?
When she first got here, she asked me how to get to Lochstownegg. I think she mentioned an author. I think the reason she came here, Fiona MacLeod. She's yes, a story writer, I think. I think maybe wrote something about the loch in one of the stories.
Interesting.
I haven't looked into it myself, but that seemed to be part of the reason that she'd come here, was having read about the island in one of these stories.
I mean, are there any sort of local stories? Perhaps not something written by this author, but just sort of the local sort of folklore, if you will, or received history.
I'm not a superstitious woman, Miss Smith. I tend to ignore these things and try and turn my eyes and my mind towards the Lord where possible. I'm sure there are many in the village who will know more about these things than me.
And might I ask, turning back to your own circumstances for a moment, when did you find the first deceased cow? When was the first occurrence of that?
Monday night. after coming back from looking for Netta.
Presumably the police have spoken to you about all of this business as well.
About Netta?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
What did they ask?
Similar questions to you, probably less detail, actually, than you have asked for. I think they... Well, I think they may have written her off as a disturbed outsider. Which she may have been, but I'm unsure if that's all there is to it.
We're outsiders too, so well, you can think of us as you wish, but perhaps we'll have fresh eyes, and perhaps we'll see something that others might not.
You haven't had any funny dreams, have you, Mrs. McRae?
Only the same one I have every night, Miss Smith.
I'm sorry.
Look, I'm famished. Can I offer you a sandwich?
Yes, that's very kind, very thoughtful. Thank you.
It is kind of late lunchtime now, so you probably are quite hungry.
If it's, I'd hate to be an imposition, but it would be very, very kind of you.
Of course. It's nice to have the company. She gets up and disappears into the next room for a few minutes.
Looking
Do we
on.
feel like she can hear us if we were talking?
You could probably whisper or talk quietly if you didn't want that really obvious whispering sound to come through from the next room.
I think Liza look around just to double check. It doesn't look like there's anything that looks less like the sort of, outdated, fussy old lady things, like, just anything that might catch the eye as potentially having been left by Netta that maybe had got missed or otherwise left behind. She would just sort of have a bit of a look around the room for something like that, just in case.
Do you want to make a spot hidden roll?
It's a 47, which does pass.
You spot on a kind of sideboard a pair, or it's kind of tucked away behind some stuff. You're unsure whether Mrs. McRae would even have noticed that they were there yet. It may not, you can't tell whether she's purposefully not told you about them or whether she's not noticed that they're there. But they're a pair of now black sort of small hoop earrings.
I will go and pick them up and sit back down.
Okay.
Just pop them into my pocket.
Go on, Matt. You look like you were going to say something.
I think Damon will just almost literally do that. Just kind of look as if to say something and then decide not to.
So she reappears with 4 sandwiches, and passes one to each of you. If you take a look at them, you notice that they're beef sandwiches.
Of course they are.
She just starts tucking in.
Oh yeah, I'll tuck in. Go on.
Yeah, I think I'll go. I think I will.
I think Dave's probably the last one to start eating, just looking like yeah, being held hostage to eat the sandwich.
It doesn't taste rotten.
That's good to know.
She also tops up everybody's cup of tea, and looks probably the most sort of at ease that you've seen her since you got here. She seems to be enjoying having other people around.
How long have you been here, Mr. McRae, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, be coming on for 20 years now.
It's certainly a beautiful part of the country.
It is.
Do you have much help with your livestock?
No. Sometimes I can over the summer employ one of the young lads from the village for a few hours a day to help me with things, but mostly deal with it myself.
Do you like having lodgers and things like that? I suppose it's a bit of get a bit of news from other parts of the world, or a bit of gossip and things. Is it?
Yes, it's something else to listen to other than that clock.
What I mean, what do you make of all of this? Really, I mean, I know you said you are a woman of faith, but are you comfortable here? Something not quite like this, but I had a sort of a strange experience myself a few years ago, and I certainly didn't feel very safe. And I feel terribly thinking about you being on your own here.
No, I certainly don't feel unsafe, Miss Smith. Whatever has happened to Netta seems to me like something that she brought with her and may have left with her.
She was found with a crucifix. No, was she religious at all? You said she was here looking for some sort of spiritual something in the island. It didn't sound very Christian to me, but she was found with a cross.
Yes, I certainly wouldn't say that we shared a faith, but well, I'm not really sure where her faith lay. She spoke of things sometimes made me slightly uncomfortable in a spiritual sense. Maybe she realized too late that
What sort of thing that made you uncomfortable?
well, she seemed to think that friends of hers would cast spells, and as I say, she was talking about contacting beings. It didn't seem very Christian to me, the things that she was speaking of contacting.
No, I suppose not.
Did she describe anything that she was trying to contact, or did she paint any kind of picture to you?
Only on that last day when she said that she'd been receiving scary messages.
And Eliza might just look to Jemima a little bit kind of questioningly. It doesn't sound like anything that Jemima had said so far she'd dabbled with in the book, but just given that she'd looked at it more than anybody else here, just sort of questioning look, see if there's any sort of recognition on her face or anything like that.
She kind of glances to Edmund as well, and then kind of looks back and gives you a sort of like a maybe.
Mm.
I feel I don't want to take up any more of your time if there's if there's things you need to deal with now with
Yes, I certainly need to tidy up the barn.
Is there anything else? Anything we can ask, relay to Mrs. Brown? Perhaps anything that she can help you with from that point of view?
I mean, I haven't met the woman, but you can feel free to pass on what's happened. Maybe it's I don't know, somebody playing a joke. Maybe we need some extra law enforcement on the island, but that'd be a sad state of affairs if that were the case.
Are there any vets on the island? Anybody who can examine the cattle?
No, we'd have to call over to the mainland. There's a veterinarian in Finnefort.
We could relay a message at least to the ferryman whenever he makes his next trip, if that would be helpful.
That would be kind, thank you.
Of course.
And we're staying at the Argyle hotel. If you do want to pass any messages on to us, anything we can help you with, then
very good. The McCabe's are a lovely couple.
They are, yes. Lovely stew.
All right. Well, I suppose we'd best get on then and leave you to it. Thank you so much for speaking with us, and I'm so sorry about the shock you've had today again.
Thank you. It was very pleasant to make your acquaintance.
You too.
Likewise, yeah.
Before we go, do you need any help moving?
No, I can deal with it. Thank you, Mr. Harrow.
Well, yeah, thank you from all of us. Thank you for the lunch. We might come check in on you again if that would be okay in the future.
Of course.
Well, good afternoon then.
Good afternoon. She leaves the house with you and heads over towards the barn.
I guess as we start walking away, once it feels like we're a bit more out of earshot, maybe, might question Jemima a little bit more about, that out loud, that sort of question about the book. Well, Jemima and Edmund, maybe, but yeah. And perhaps we should. I suppose we ought to tell Mary Brown. She might know a little more about it as well. But I suppose we also ought to go see those the boys that found her, especially if one of them has also got cattle. If maybe there's some sort of cow connection. I don't quite know how that makes sense, but there's something funny.
Yes. Yes, I was disturbed by a couple of things that were mentioned there. The idea that her mind was being attacked remotely.
Yes.
That has parallels to the pamphlet I've been reading. Hopefully no direct connections, but yes. A worrying development.
Sort of contacting other beings as well. Right? That her group must have that book.
It seems likely, yeah.
Spells and things. Yes.
I wonder what made her a target. She seemed, I don't know, fairly ineffectual, wandering around the island in trances.
Being open to it, explicitly calling out into the void and saying, "Here I am, come and get me," might be all whatever this thing was wanted.
Maybe she's making too much noise.
Do you think her friend knows that she's dead? It was just a few days ago. If her friend is still down in London somewhere, she might not even know just yet.
We should ask Mary, I think. Perhaps she'll know whether she's been contacted already.
Because if not,
we should. Well, yes.
Not that I would promote the idea of forgery, of course, but well. Yes, I suppose we ought to check in with Mary, drop a note off with the ferryman, and if we've got time, see those boys tonight. Should we crack on?
Yes, that seems reasonable. It would be good to learn more about this author as well. I'm intrigued that the lock seemed to be of some significance. So yes, perhaps. Well, maybe local author. Perhaps there'll be copies of these books back at the hotel.
Was she local? I didn't think Mrs. McRae seemed to particularly know her. The story was about a local spot. Maybe she wasn't local herself.
That is an assumption I've made, but yes, you're right.
It's just interesting, isn't it? Of course, the stories about local places and funny things going on related to those stories. Yes, I wouldn't mind on a copy of that book if there was one available.
Yes. Hopefully, these will be less impactful than the last ones we heard about.
Oh, sorry. Of course, the two of you weren't there. Some gardener told us stories about this pair, and then we suddenly saw one, and it all seemed to be connected to this nasty nonsense that we encountered before, and well, it just seems a little bit parallel. Stories becoming real, or things that were real being told as stories when, yes, I don't know. Right. Jonny, looking at from the map, where would be our closest stop? I think we said that Jimmy Doherty was sort of on the other side of the island, but which would be
Yep.
closer, Mary's cottage or the ferry stop?
You pass the cottage to get to the ferry.
Okay, yeah, I guess we'll stop in there first then.
Um,
And knock, see if they're in.
yeah, you hear a shuffling from inside, and then the door opens, and it's Reverend Moore, and you can see the back of the room. Mary is on the telephone, and he says, hello, come in.
Thank you. We've just spoken with Mrs. McRae. Learned a little more about what's happened with Netta. Rather more questions than answers, as always. But, perhaps something for you to go on. One thing I did want to ask was, does Dion Fortune, her friend, do you know if she knows that Netta has died?
We haven't informed Miss Fortune directly, so unless it's made it to the news wherever she is by now, then it's unlikely.
Right. We spoke with Mrs. McRae, and she certainly said that Netta was. There was quite a lot really. That she was some sort of spiritual journey and was wandering around in trances and the like, and was trying deliberately to contact some sort of otherworldly being. She certainly seems to be connected to one of these organizations that maybe has access to that book, because she was talking about spells and summoning things and yes, other creatures beyond. But most pertinently, she seemed to come with some sort of interest in the loch. There was some sort of story from an author, Fiona MacLeod, with some sort of story about the loch. If there's any chance of getting a copy of that book, or if you know anyone, or I suppose we could always ask around the town. And then also she said her mind was being attacked. You and Mary Brown had more time with the book. Does that sound like you look a little shocked?
Intrigued, I would say, more than shocked. The things that I gleaned from that book in my short time perusing it, it wouldn't surprise me if that were the kind of thing that were written in there. Although if her group is the one with the book, why would it be used on her?
That's a good question.
Perhaps it's all the other way around. Or perhaps it isn't those with the book who are the ones attacking her, were the ones attacking her mind. I don't know if that's some sort of spell or if that's some sort of ability of one of these creatures she was contacting, beings she was contacting. So we can't ask her, can we?
Well, she seemed to be seeing visions, or, well, I presume they were visions. Obviously, we had our own experiences at Fingask, but yes, she said she'd seen a rudderless boat flying across the sky, and she said she'd received terrifying messages from beyond. Now, I hesitate to.
Going to leave. She wanted to get out of here.
Yes, and then she changed her mind overnight.
Oh, and I suppose I shouldn't have really, but I did spot these, and I'll pick out the earrings and pop them on a table or wherever, your sideboard or whatever's closest, and say, it seems the police took everything of hers, but these were sort of tucked away a little bit, and it seems that all of her jewellery sort of blackened in that way. And I suppose these must also have been her earrings. I don't know if there's anything we can do with these, or if it is helpful at all for the investigation. But
well, since we haven't yet managed to talk the police or coroner around, this is our only real piece of hard evidence. So thank you. This is very helpful.
I was going to ask you what you'd found. Fascinating.
Would this have done this
Yes,
anyway over time? I guess Dave is kind of looking at the science bods with this question.
I've just had a thought. I've just had a thought. Silver does tarnish over time.
oh, and yes, there was something about this. There's something time.
That cow's body looked like
Yes.
it had been there a lot longer than.
Yes.
Yes,
it could have been.
and Jemima, you said you thought that the cross had been there for longer than the body, and but perhaps it wasn't. Perhaps it's another thing that looks older than it actually is somehow.
We
You're on mute, Jonny.
That was just a theory, but perhaps, yes.
And I'll probably take an opportunity to explain to the Reverend about Mrs. McRae's dead cattle.
Yeah. That's very troubling, especially for the poor woman.
Mm.
I believe she's gone through enough already.
We were going to check on the boys next, but she did mention that Jimmy Doherty also keeps cows, so also might as well see the state of his. Maybe Mrs. McRae is closer to whatever this strangeness is through Netta, but Jimmy found her, so maybe they're all tied up in it somehow now. I suppose much like we were.
These things do seem to have a knack for drawing people in.
That's certainly the case. Do we know whether Jimmy Doherty was actively searching for? Because Mrs. McRae mentioned that people had started looking for Netta. Do we know whether Doherty had was actively trying to find Netta at that point, or
I believe that yes, Jimmy and Cameron Ferguson, it was that found her. I believe that they were searching. Yes.
Well, I suppose we'd better go and ask them about it. Reverend, given what we've told you, is there anything else that springs to mind for you? Any other theories or questions that you have that we can perhaps try to discover answers to as we continue?
I don't think so. We've managed to. Netta was an officer in a co-masonry lodge in London. That's one of the main things that we've managed to find out so far. We're hoping from there we can trace if she's ended up in some offshoot that was. I mean, some of these places do look at sort of magical rites and trances anyway, but yes, they often have splinters, which are the people who are even more dedicated to studying the occult, I suppose. So we may find a more extreme group that she may have become a part of. That's what Mrs. Brown's doing now.
Well, I suppose we'd better keep investigating things here while you're pursuing those leads.
Once, if you decide that your next step is to speak to Dion Fortune, then well, there is a telephone at the Argyle, I believe, but if ours is not in use here, you're welcome to use that as well, obviously.
Do you have contact details for Dion?
I'm sure we could find those with. Well, I'm sure Mary could find those.
Because I rather than informing her about what had happened, I wondered whether we might see if we could intercept any communications from Dion to Netta, especially if she received something from Netta expressing concern, or what these concerns that she'd expressed to Mrs. McCrae. I wonder what her friend would say to her. You're a close confidant as opposed to us strangers. But I suppose if we don't have letters and things that she sent before, we'd find it quite hard to recreate something like that.
If you think that you have made some kind of connection with Mrs. McCrae, it could be worth you hinting that you might like to see any correspondence that turns up for Netta before she passes it on to the police.
Well, we did say we might stop in and visit her again. So I suppose we could.
That would be made easier if perhaps this is something that Mary might arrange. We did wonder about the possibility of getting a veterinarian surgeon over from the mainland to investigate the situation with the cattle. That might be a useful way in, a way to broach.
He grabs a scrap of paper from on the table and writes Mary : call vet from Finnefort for Mrs. McCrae.
Excellent.
Does this mean that if any letters did arrive still on the island for Netta, the police are not intercepting them? Would they go straight to Mrs. McCrae still, do you think?
Yes, I can't imagine that they would be intercepting letters to her.
I suppose they considered the matter closed, didn't they? They're not continuing to investigate. Yes, okay. Well, yes, I suppose we could plant that seed of a thought with Mrs. McCrae, or offer to have them returned to sender or something. I don't know. Well, I suppose there won't be anything else arriving today now at this time, but yes, perhaps
No.
Her
you can visit again in the morning, perhaps, and
Jonny, what sort of time of day is it now? Is it getting a bit late now to visit other people, or it'll be starting to get dark fairly quickly, right? Because it's like November.
Yeah, you've probably got, I would say, maybe 2 hours till sunset and 3 hours probably until it's properly dark. 2.5 to 3 hours until it's properly dark. And you probably 30 minutes to the other farm. Basically, it's marked on the map. But Cameron Ferguson and Jimmy Doherty's farms are sort of next to each other. So it's up to you. You'd probably struggle to go to both today. So if you wanted to do something else with the rest of today and then go to both tomorrow, rather than going back and forth, or it's up to you. But yeah, I think if you wanted to get back before nightfall, you'd probably do one of their their farms.
Do we have anything else on the cards?
I don't. I think these are our main leads, really, aren't they? But certainly, if we went to see Jimmy and he does have a problem with his cows, we can tell him that we've already called for a vet, and actually, speed might be helpful there.
Yes,
if we
yes,
call him
yes.
first.
That sounds sensible to me.
All right. Well, should we try now before it starts to get dark?
I would like to catch the ferryman as well. I don't know when the next ferry's due.
You'll have missed the first two, and you could probably time it correctly with coming back from the farms to get the sort of late afternoon ferry.
Great. Yeah, so Dane will suggest that for the way back.
All right. Shall we get on then?
Sounds like a good idea. Yes.
Okay, so it looks like the best way for you to get there is basically past the site where Netta was found, and up past the lock to the farms.
Maybe take an ambling kind of walk and try and sort of hit that spot again, and maybe that perhaps we ought to, even if it's a mild detour, just skirt around the lock a little, just sort of with a sense of place.
Always happy to stretch my legs.
Yes, certainly.
So as you're kind of wandering down that area, the whole place is, apart from the path, which is kind of a trod path, it's basically untouched. This area, sort of entirely natural. You can't really see any man-made things on the horizon because obviously you're in this kind of bowl, and you can't even see the two farms that you're heading to from where you are. You can see that in the distance the ground kind of slopes, so you presume that the farms might be slightly down that slope. But yeah, it's this kind of serene, completely natural area that could have been the exact same, 2,000 years ago. And then you
Edmund will be looking around, enjoying the scenery, but also keeping an eye open for any signs of advanced decay, anything that is yes.
I think Eliza, maybe a little bit weird is the other way around. Will also be like, especially as it starts to get dark, so maybe it won't be so much now. Like just occasionally kind of checking the sky for any shooting green lights or the like. And then as we seem to be approaching the bit where Netta was found, just checking that cross is still there and that we can still see that point.
Sorry, you want to know how far you can kind of see that from? So.
Just as we're approaching, just checking that it is still there, that it hasn't sort of disappeared or doesn't look different in some way now than it did when we saw it earlier this morning. Yeah. The same. And then I guess as we're approaching the lock, just I mean, I don't even know what she'd be looking for, but just really looking at it from a sort of, I guess, trying to put herself in like Netta's headspace. Like, is there some sort of weird, juju going on here? Is there some sort of strange spiritual vibes that seem otherworldly in some way? Is there just anything that takes her attention other than the sort of, beauty of the nature of the space?
Not to you. The otherworldliness, like I said, it's definitely not a city. So it does have that kind of untouched kind of separate feeling. Whether Eliza would consider it otherworldly in a spiritual sense is a different matter, but to somebody who were that way inclined, it's quite possible that she would view it that way. But yeah, there's nothing sort of, there are no lights flickering in the air or anything, nothing physically obvious.
We've not seen anybody out and about, have we?
No. So again, as you pass through the village, anytime you wander through the village, you see a couple of people. But once you've got out to this area, you don't see anybody.
I mean, if there isn't anything particularly obvious, then wouldn't kind of stop at this point. And well, actually, maybe I'll ask: do we want to just carry straight onto the farm, or does anybody want to have a bit of an explore of the loch at all, or perhaps come back to do that tomorrow, see if there's anything unusual?
I think we should probably press onwards.
Jemima, you were a marine biologist. Perhaps there's something watery you might find interesting when we've got a bit more time to explore in the full light of day, rather than as the darkness is drawing on us.
Yes, certainly. As Mr. Harrow is aware, I do like to take samples and check on the local flora and fauna.
All right. Well, we'll be sure to come back tomorrow then. All right. Well, Jimmy Doherty then. I guess we'll carry on in that direction. Yep.
So yeah, eventually, as you kind of pass the loch and the ground kind of dips away ahead of you, you see initially one farmhouse, and then in a kind of bit past a copse of trees, you see another one. So you know that the one that's easternmost is Jimmy Doherty's from your map. So if you wanted to visit him first based on the cow combo, then that's fine.
Decision.
Relatively nice farmhouse. You pass through some fields as you get there, which obviously don't have anything growing in them at the moment, but are kind of turned ready for the next year's crops. And you also see a field with grazing cattle. You also, as you near, hear the sound of like chickens clucking and stuff. And you enter kind of the farmyard area, and you see, if you look around, you spot a man over in the field where the cows are.
I guess head in that direction.
Yeah. So as you get nearer, you spot he's a relatively tall guy, pretty sort of well built, and he's sort of chucking feed into a trough for the animals, and he happens to turn around and kind of spot you as you're wandering over, and he walks up to the fence of the field that he's in and says, "Can I help you?"
Yes, hopefully. Is it Jimmy Doherty?
Aye. And you are?
Well, I'm Eliza Smith. We've just spoken with. We've just been and spoken with Mrs. McRae. She's having some trouble with her cattle, and well, frankly, I wondered whether you were having any trouble as well.
Not apart from not having enough time in the day to to deal with the things.
Sorry to interrupt you while you're working. Then,
No, sorry, that came across as rude. That wasn't my intention. No, I'm having no problem with my cattle.
Oh well, that's good. Well, yes. Eliza will kind of look a little bit sort of to the others for help. She doesn't know how to talk to farmers.
There have been issues. There have been issues elsewhere on the island. Just as of this morning, Miss McRae, she's had I think a third of her cows died in somewhat strange circumstances.
In the last week, in the last few days, in fact. I presume that's. I'm not a farmer, but I presume that's not normal.
Absolutely not. They're not old, our cows either.
You've not had any diseases or viruses or anything?
None through mine, I'm afraid.
Well, we said we'd call on the vet for her from the mainland, so I suppose he'll be here hopefully in a day or so, just in case, if that's helpful.
I'd be happy for him to come and check mine over. I mean, relatively experienced. I can't see anything wrong with them, but best to check, I suppose.
You'd notice if you were if they had the same issue. Quite unfortunate.
She said it was like they were being eaten from the inside out. It sounded rather nasty, actually.
Mm.
Oh dear.
Well,
perhaps I'll pop over later and check on her.
I'm sure she would appreciate that a lot. Yes, good idea.
But there was also, I suppose we wondered whether there might be a connection, not just because you obviously also have cattle, but also because you, I suppose it sounds like a sort of a strange connection, but we heard you found her lodger dead a few days ago, and that all was a bit strange, and then the cattle was a bit strange, and I suppose we thought there might be some sort of connection.
I'm not sure what the connection would be, but it was me and Cam that found the poor girl.
Did you know her really before this incident?
No, I think I'd only met her once or twice.
That's a little unusual given how long she was here, wasn't it? She was here for a few months.
Well, we're the other end of the island. She seemed to, from what I understand, just take herself off. Certainly didn't seem to involve herself in the community while she was here.
I suppose we wouldn't want to make the same mistake while we stay here. What sort of thing do you mean by involve yourself in the community? Are there dances or something? I don't know.
No, but there aren't many pubs, places to eat. You tend to, if you go out 2 or 3 times a year, you tend to see the same people. She didn't seem to be doing any of those things, which, visitors especially would usually go to these places and try and get a feel, I suppose, for the area. She seemed to be on some kind of different plane of existence, I suppose. It's very dreamy when I met her, sort of, away with the fairies, I suppose you could say, which is ironic considering where she was found.
What do you mean?
Oh, well, those are where she was found. They were fairy mounds. The area around the loch is, well, you know how folk tales go, but it's believed to be where fairies roam free. It's obviously a load of old rubbish, but fun stories to tell the kids, keep them away from the loch.
They're scary fairies, then, are they?
Well, anything you don't understand can be scary, can't it, I suppose? And if you want to use them to keep the kids away from the loch, then yes, they're scary fairies. But if it keeps the kids safe, then little scare is the least harm, isn't it?
That's true. Fear can be protective in its own way.
Were there any particular stories about these fairies and that loch in particular?
I think
sort of local flavour to this.
I think a couple of people might have written stories about it, but for me, it's just things passed down.
Would these stories be? Is there a little library or something like that where we might find something like that to read?
I mean, there are books in the pub and in the Argyle, maybe. The nearest library's Finnefort. We've little use for a library here. Most people don't have the time, I'm afraid, to be picking up a book.
We're staying at the Argyle, so I suppose we could always maybe a little bedtime reading or something. We can try it out.
I hate to ask you to revisit this, but is there anything you remember about finding her that sticks with you? In particular, obviously, aside from how unpleasant it must have been, was there?
Well,
I mean, we've paid a short visit to the site earlier, and it was certainly unusual.
yes, I mean, she was obviously not clothed, which was strange and very odd circumstance. There didn't look to be anything. It didn't seem as if anything had happened to her to cause her death from my very inexperienced eyes. Even though there was a knife nearby, but
A knife.
yes, yeah. Quite
Can you recall any
ornate
detail?
looking thing, but it seemed to have gone black like her necklace.
But she didn't have any kind of wounds on her, right?
No.
Well, you said it was ornate. Do you remember what it looked like? Could you sketch something?
It's just a fancy pattern on the hilt. I honestly couldn't recall exactly what that pattern would have looked like. It just wasn't a leather hilt on a knife or what have you, which I would expect. Kind of carved hilt.
When you say it was found nearby, was it some sort of distance, or was it close to her hand, as though she'd been holding it, perhaps?
Within a few feet of her, I would say.
And within a sort of arm's sort of height?
I suppose she may have been holding it, yes, but, before we found her.
And the turf had been cut into the shape of a cross. Have you ever seen anything like that before on the island?
No.
Is that of local significance?
The only crosses that I would have seen are people wearing them around their neck or in the church, or
Not the mischief the fairies get up to, then.
not as far as I'm aware.
And you found her with another man, Cameron Ferguson. You were out searching for her, was that right?
Yes, yeah. Cam and I had we'd done a morning's work and then picked up the search again. We'd gone out Monday afternoon, and then worked the morning on Tuesday, and then found her early Tuesday afternoon.
The temperatures it gets to at this sort of time of day, you said there was no sort of obvious cause of death, but if she'd been out exposed like that over the night, surely would the temperatures be enough to cause death through exposure to cold?
I suppose so, but then I still, in that case, I didn't see a reason for her to have been there outside.
No, of course.
It's not as if she was bound to anything or in any way, imprisoned out there. She just was there.
You didn't see anything, maybe not even before you saw her, but maybe even the previous night. Nothing in the skies, or nothing seemed otherwise unusual.
No, it was a very clear night on Monday night, actually, and nothing that seemed strange that I can think of.
Well, you were sort of keen, I suppose, to understand what's happened here, and well, we said we'd visit Mrs. McRae as well, and obviously, hopefully, there is no connection with the cattle, but it just all seemed a little odd, and everything happening about the same sort of time.
Do you think there's anybody that she may have upset during her time here? Everyone we've spoken to mentions how unusual she was, how unusual her behavior was.
I mean, it's possible that she rubbed somebody the wrong way, but we find the majority of visitors here to be strange. As I'm sure they find our way of life strange.
Have there ever been anybody who's strange in the same way, to your recollection?
Over the years, I'm sure, but maybe not to the degree of Netta.
Yes, have there been other visitors who were interested in the fairies or the fairy mounds before?
Other than ourselves, I should.
Yes, I suppose we count now, don't we?
I suppose not that I'm specifically aware of them coming here specifically to look at the mounds, but then, anybody who comes to look at the loch could have been coming to look there, as far as we're aware. It's difficult to say.
Right. Well, I mean, like I said, we'll be staying in the Argyle. We may pop by again at some point. We're not sure how long we'll be here, but obviously it's been a bit of a strange set of circumstances that have happened just before we've arrived. Yes, I suppose I hope there's nothing else strange that goes on.
As do I. I would certainly like to avoid any further strange, upsetting discoveries like the one a couple of days ago.
Just before we go, how was your impression of the police presence? Were you there when when they arrived after you sounded the alarm?
Yes, Cam ran into the village, and I waited with the body, and well, they came, and the volunteers, and here you wouldn't expect to be dealing with something like this. So honestly, I think they were more shocked than I was. But I mean, they did a fine job. They collected everything up, and I believe they went to Sally's house and collected all of Netta's belongings, and got a coroner involved, and I'm sure they've followed all the procedure correctly.
But no questions to you from anyone from the mainland, or
only, when did you find her? Have you moved anything? Did you see anything? The typical questions you might imagine, but nothing other than that. I might go and see Sally now, check she's okay.
I'm sure she'd appreciate that.
Well, I suppose we'll leave you to go and check in on Mrs. McRae. She seemed in all right spirits when we left her, but then she was off to go deal with her dead cow, and she sort of turned down our help. But you obviously know what you're doing a little better than we would, so perhaps you'll appreciate the help.
Well, you know where I am if you have any further questions.
Right. Thank you so much for your time, and sorry for interrupting you this evening.
Oh, no problem. He goes and kind of picks up his stuff that he was dealing with in the field and takes it inside.
And once I guess again, is that sort of earshot, might just say to the others, Mary and the Reverend, they didn't mention anything about a knife, did they? Did I forget that? Was that maybe they didn't? The police didn't reveal that sort of information. That's a bit unusual. And I really want to go and have a look. Maybe if we go back to the Argyle, and if we do find some books like that, I wouldn't mind having a bit of a skim this evening. See if there is anything curious. Maybe we can go back when we go back to the lock tomorrow.
If we were looking for the significance of the place, then fairies.
Yes.
It's an interesting starting point.
Well, like I said, there were some stories before that sort of became significant. So, yes, and I'm quite keen to understand what that is. And, maybe fairies are just some sort of explanation for some sort of otherworldly something that is connected to the place. Maybe it is about the place. She did come here for that place. So, yes, I think there might be something about it. And if there was some sort of green shooting light, maybe it wasn't a random spot. Maybe it was a deliberate sort of targeted. Well, I suppose we'll have to read and see if we can find anything out, won't we?
It's very strange that we haven't heard about the knife until now. I think that warrants some questioning.
Do you think perhaps the police didn't tell Mary, or do you think Mary didn't tell us?
I have to assume the former, unless she wanted a very complicated goose chase for us.
Well, we can ask. Is the cottage on the way to the ferry? Is that?
You would pass sort of the way down to the ferry on the way to the cottage.
Right. Okay.
And how far away is the Argyle in this? Yeah, whereabouts does that get placed in the whole mix?
Again, you pass the ferry bit, and then you get to the Argyle, and then you get to
The cottage.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I guess we'll head back via the ferry then.
Okay. You have to wait probably 5 or 10 minutes for the ferry, but you kind of spot it coming over. It's beginning to get dark by the time it arrives, and it pulls in, and some guys kind of get off and start unloading some stuff onto the pier, and you spot the guy who you assume to be the captain.
So, yeah, Dana kind of march forward to him and say, Sir, a moment of your time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think the best approach. We're here investigating something terrible that happened. You might have heard. Do you keep records of people leaving and coming to the island? Might you have any detail on who's been on your ferry over the last few days?
Only if they pre-book.
How about when you're at sea? Do you log the number of people aboard, or
No need for that.
have you seen anyone kind of come on off the same day? Any passengers that caught your eye over the recent days?
Coroner came over from Finnefort about that girl.
She came. She wanted to leave the island, but there wasn't a ferry. Did you see her that day, that Sunday, before she died? Obviously.
No, I'm afraid not.
All right. Well, kind of looking at the others. Thank you anyway.
Oh,
If you come back with a name, then maybe I can help.
Well, I don't know if this was sort of your remit or not, but the next ferry trip, I think Mrs. McRae's having some trouble with her cows, and we said we'd leave word that perhaps maybe the vet could be called for. I think the Reverend might be trying to make some sort of arrangements, but if you are next travelling across to Finnefort, that and could relay the message, I'm sure Mrs. McRae would be very grateful.
Don't often see the vet, but okay.
Thank you. Sorry to bother you. If we get a name, we'll come back. Thanks again.
He turns and steps back onto the boat.
Actually went better than I thought it was going to go.
I really don't know what to make of most of these people.
I'm sure they think the same.
Yes, I suppose we must be a bit odd coming around and asking all these questions out of the blue. Well, do we want to report back to the Reverend, or do we think they might come and visit us at the Argyle if that's the next closest stop? I might get a jump on.
We can always give them a call, I guess. Oh,
Yes,
well, we don't know their phone number.
Oh yes, but the McCabe's must know
That's
the
true.
cottage. Yes, if we stop by the Argyle and perhaps give them a ring, I might start having a little look at those books.
Okay, heading into the Argyle. Cool. The door is open. Neither William or Kate are visible when you enter. You do now notice a couple of bookshelves along the wall downstairs near the window.
Yeah, well, I'll start looking through those. I presume Eliza will be as well.
Yep, for sure.
Give us library use rolls, whoever's looking.
I have library use.
Jemima would probably be looking as well, I suppose.
Oh dear.
That's a 73 for me, which is a fail over my 55.
I got a 70 over my 63. Not good.
63. I'm just floating around in the books.
Oh,
Throw them around.
hang on, how much luck would that be?
Jemima got a 64 out of 70. So Jemima pulls a book out and goes, "This may be what we're looking for." And it's a book called Iona by Fiona MacLeod.
Excellent.
Oh, brilliant.
And Kate comes out of the kitchen at this point, and says, "Oh, hello. Have you all had a productive day? Obviously, I don't want to know anything about your day, but has it been nice?"
The landscape is beautiful.
Yes, it is a lovely part
It is.
of the world.
It is. It is. Well, can I offer anybody a drink, a cup of tea?
Oh, yes, please.
Good.
Yes, that'd be great.
Dinner will be a couple of hours, but have you had lunch today? I could do some a small bit of food now if you were hungry.
Well, we have eaten actually. We were treated to some sandwiches earlier, so I'm certainly okay. How about the rest?
I'm sure I can hold on for dinner. Yes.
Yes, I'm just got an appetite for this book right now.
A cup of tea will be most adequate for tiding us over. Thank you.
Of course. She disappears into the kitchen, and then the door to the Argyle opens, and Mary and the Reverend come in with quite serious looks on their faces, and come and sit near you. Mary Brown says, We've found the group that Netta became a part of. They're called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And I believe that I'm 100% sure that they worship who two of you would know as the ringmaster of a very disturbing circus. And we'll leave it there.
No!
Oh dear. And so it begins.
Uh-oh.
There we are.
Yeah, I did see somewhere in the, was it Scary Fairies and Funny Bunnies? Joining forces now. Uh-oh.
I realised last week that in a Scottish accent saying "meet Mary off the ferry" sounded quite comical. As I was saying it, I realised and nobody chuckled on camera, so I think I got away with it. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat, and John can put them up on screen for us to discuss and answer for you. other things, promo. Yes, there are links below the video for our social media, Patreon, Discord, Twitch, and YouTube. Tomorrow night we have Blades in the Dark. Wednesday night we have Simba Room. The 28th of August we have the second part of our One Ring game, the first part of which is on YouTube for you to watch. And that's it, I think, for the moment, for promo. It's getting easier. Thanks for watching. Hopefully we'll have Sam back next week. So Jemima can do more things. Although, at least she found the book.
Yeah, no, that was
Instrumental.
I might have fluffed my library use. That's very disappointing. They must have stored all of the books, backwards, spines towards the wall.
Lord Malice, so much fascination with dead cows. Weren't we supposed to be investigating a human death?
Yeah, but
it's like, you're a man with the cows, and maybe there's a sort of segue here. Eliza is not, obviously not a country girl.
it's one of those weird things where if you start a Cthulhu story and you just get a group of investigators piling into somebody's house and just asking them rafts of questions, it's a bit weird. It feels a little bit, surely they'd go like, just get out. You've asked too many questions now. Go, shoo.
If you ask loads about the cow and then go, so by the way, the person who lived with you who's dead also.
Yeah.
It's a great icebreaker just having a dead cow outside.
Yeah, it's handy. Yeah,
if I have a move, I'm going to do that just to make a few friends early.
I did think after last week's honey cliffhanger, I did wonder whether it was going to be a beekeeper hunched over a hive. So
they're not usually in barns, though, are they?
No.
You'll never know whether I was planning on having honey and changed it to a dead cow.
That's always a mystery. So how many too many questions did we ask? And how do you cope with just that torrent of, what were they wearing? And which direction did they face? And
I actually have quite a lot of information on this one. I think more so with this one than I have with the other two. So the majority of questions are and will be fine.
Excellent.
I like how
there's a challenge.
Inevitably, the group is also a little bit less circumspect about asking bizarre questions. They're just like straight to the point. Because it doesn't seem as weird anymore, I suppose.
So, Mr. Farmer, exactly which cult do you think she's a member of?
Tell us more about these fairies.
Foregathers, Lucasaurus, and Debunker, thank you for following since the last stream. Are there any more questions or comments? Oh, cool. That's everything in the chat. I did like, again, I spotted scary fairies. Is that different from funny bunnies from Lord Malice earlier? That was comical. I also really liked, I spotted when I said about the area where the fairies roam free. I saw John put in chat, here we go. There's always a tipping point, isn't there? It's earlier this time because everybody's already aware that weird things happen. So, yeah. Cool. Thanks everybody for watching, and hopefully we'll catch you next week to find out more about cults and farmers.
Cows.
Yeah.
Cults and cows.
Cults and cows. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Next week.